The cold wind howled across the empty streets of the outer colony. Shadows stretched long under the dim lights of the spaceport, and the sound of distant engines echoed like ghosts. A figure moved quietly. She was tall, with skin that shimmered faintly under the lights, a soft blue hue that marked her as different. Her eyes, large and dark, scanned every corner, every shadow, looking for something. Anything to eat. Her name was Leora. Once she had a home, a family, a life full of warmth and laughter, but that was before the war on her planet, before the ships came and took everything. A widow, hungry in a way. That gnawed at her bones, a hollow emptiness that no memory or dream could fill. She crept toward a small food market, its lights flickering, its stalls long abandoned. Her stomach growled. She tried to ignore it, telling herself to be careful. They didn't trust aliens. From the shadows a little girl emerged. Barefoot, in a worn dress, she looked up at Leora with wide eyes. The girl's hair was messy, but there was a spark in her gaze that seemed to pierce through the cold night. "Are you hungry?" Who was this child? How did she know? Different, kind, not afraid. I am, Leora admitted, her voice low, almost a whisper. The girl smiled. "I thought so. You look." "No, you don't seem dangerous. You look lonely. Double quotes lonely." The word struck Leora harder than hunger ever had. She had been lonely for so long, drifting from one shadow to another, one ruined settlement to the next, always hiding. "My dad, he has food. Warm food you can eat if you want." Leora's heart thumped. It felt impossible, and yet, something in the child's innocence, her bright, determined eyes, stirred a feeling she hadn't felt in years. "I cannot," Leora said slowly, shaking her head. "I don't belong there." The girl frowned. "Why not? Are you afraid? Or do you think he won't like you?" Leora hesitated. Both questions were true. But there was something so simple, so pure. Curiosity. The girl smiled again, this time a little mischievous. "Then maybe you should marry my dad. Then you can stay and eat whenever you want." Leora blinked. She stared at the little girl in disbelief. Marry her father? She wasn't sure if she should laugh or run. Yet beneath the shock, a small warmth began to bloom in her chest, something fragile, like a spark in the dark. The girl tilted her head. "Don't worry, he's nice, and I think you'll like him. You just need a warm place to eat, right?" Leora swallowed hard. She had survived hunger, danger, and loss, but never. So impossible and yet somehow so tempting. She looked down at the girl. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. This little human could change everything. A soft sound echoed from the alley behind her footsteps, distant, but drawing closer. Not even close, but... The little girl's hand reached out, tugging gently at her sleeve. "Come on. Just come with me," she whispered and for the first time in a long time, Leora felt a tiny, fragile flicker of hope. The little girl, named Mina, tugged gently at Leora's sleeve, her tiny fingers strong with determination. "Come. You can't stay out here hungry forever." Leora hesitated. Every instinct told her to. Run, to vanish into the night. Humans were unpredictable. And yet, there was something in Mina's eyes that made Leora pause. Something innocent, something pure. "Where are we going?" Leora asked cautiously. "To my home," Mina replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "My dad has food. He's nice." "I promise," Leora blinked. She had not expected such boldness from a child, and yet her curiosity grew stronger. Then her caution. Hunger gnawed at her, a cruel reminder that her body would not wait for trust to grow. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she followed Mina through the winding streets of the colony. As they walked, Mina chattered quietly, telling stories about her small apartment, the kind of meals her dad liked to cook, and the little plants she tried. Leora listened quietly, surprised by how comforting the sound of human words could be. Warmth spilled out from the small kitchen, and the smell of cooked food made Leora's stomach twist with hunger. A loaf of bread, some roasted vegetables, and a steaming pot of stew sat on the table. Leora's eyes widened. She had not smelled food like this in years. Her mind was torn between fear and relief, distrust and longing. She wanted to step back. As Leora reached for the bread, Mina glanced at her thoughtfully. Then, with a boldness that shocked even herself, she said, "I know. You should marry my dad." Leora froze, bread halfway to her lips. Marry her father? The words sounded absurd, impossible, and yet the way Mina said them made it sound like the most natural solution in the world. I can't," Leora stammered. "I don't know him. I don't belong here. You can't just ask a human to do such things." Mina's dark eyes sparkled with determination. "Why not? You're hungry. You're lonely. He's kind. And I think you two could be happy together. You'll have food, and he'll have, well, someone to care about him." Leora stared at the girl, trying to understand. Did Mina really, even her, find happiness together? The thought seemed impossible, yet for the first time in years she felt a small flicker of hope. "Your plan? It's very bold," Leora said slowly, "very unusual." Mina nodded, her face serious now. "Yes, but it will work. You just need to meet him, talk to him, smile at him, that's all. And if he says yes, you'll never be hungry again." It was a small, fragile sound, but it startled her by how good it felt. Hunger had brought her here, yes, but it was something else, the innocence, the courage, the simple faith of this little human that made her heart flutter in a way she hadn't felt in years. Suddenly, the door opened again, and Mina's father appeared, tall, kind-faced, and unaware of the conversation that had just taken place. He smiled at Mina. "There you are." "Who's this?" Leora froze. Her instincts screamed at her to vanish, to disappear into the shadows. But Mina, unfazed, took Leora's hand and said, "This is the lady I told you about. She's hungry. Can she stay for a meal?" The father blinked, surprised, but the warmth in his eyes told Leora something she hadn't expected. He didn't see an alien. He didn't see someone strange. He saw a person, but still a person deserving care. Leora's stomach growled again, and this time she smiled softly. Perhaps, just perhaps, this little girl's bold idea wasn't so impossible after all. The room felt. Hope, after so many years, had a smell. It smelled like bread, warmth, and the possibility of something more. And as the night deepened outside, Leora realized that this meeting, this bold, unusual plan of a little girl, might just change everything. Leora's heart pounded as she followed Mina deeper into the small apartment. Every step felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were watching her, judging her. She had survived wars, hunger, and the endless cold of distant planets, but now she faced something far stranger, human hospitality. Mina's father, David, was in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup. He looked up and froze when he saw Leora. Her skin shimmered faintly in the light, her large dark eyes wide with caution. She wasn't like anyone he had ever seen. And yet, there was something about her presence, soft, quiet, hesitant, that made him pause. Hello, David said slowly, unsure what to do. Leora bowed slightly, unsure of what humans expected in greetings. Hello, she replied, her voice soft, careful. She had practiced politeness, but human customs were strange. You just have to eat first. Then, maybe you can talk more? Yes, food, she said. David nodded and gestured toward the table. Sick, please, eat. Leora moved slowly to the chair, noticing every little thing, the cluttered kitchen, the small plants on the windowsill, the colorful drawings pinned to the wall. These humans lived in a simple way, yet there was warmth here, a feeling she had not experienced in years. As she ate quietly, "Yes," Leora said, choosing her words carefully. I travel, I look for work." "Exciting, but also dangerous?" Leora nodded. "Yes, very dangerous. But I survive." Mina giggled. "She's saying she's strong." Leora blinked at the child's interpretation and allowed herself a small smile. Strength. Yes, she had survived everything alone. But this wasn't a battle. Not yet. This was something different. David hesitated, glancing at Mina. She's an alien, right?" he asked softly. "Yes," Mina said proudly. "But she's nice, and maybe she can marry you." The absurdity of the idea was clear, yet somehow, in the child's eyes, it felt natural. "Marry me?" Leora repeated, tilting her head. "Your daughter asked this of me." "Yes," Mina said eagerly. "So you won't be hungry anymore, and you'll have someone to take care of you." Leora's hands trembled slightly. The proposition was so bold, so unusual. She had survived loneliness for so long, hiding in shadows, avoiding humans. And yet, the idea that someone kind, even a human, might care enough to offer her a place to belong. It made her chest ache in a strange way. David cleared his throat. I think we need to talk about this," he said carefully. "It's complicated. I mean, she's different, from another planet." Leora nodded, understanding. "Yes, I am different. But I am also hungry and lonely." Mina smiled. "See? That's why it's perfect. You just need each other." The tension in the room was thick, yet beneath it, something new began to bloom, a fragile connection, a spark of trust. Leora realized that fear had kept her alive for years, but curiosity, and maybe hope, might give her something more. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds the bubbling soup and the occasional hum of the city outside. Leora looked at David, unsure what he was thinking. He looked at her, unsure what to do. Bold girl had taken control of their lives in a way neither of them expected. For the first time in years, Leora felt something unfamiliar. Possibility. Perhaps, she thought, this meeting, the awkward, strange, and unexpected meeting, was the beginning of something new. Something she could never have imagined when she was alone in the cold streets. Outside, the night was still and quiet. Inside, something warmer had begun to grow. A little girl's bold idea had started to weave its thread, connecting a lonely alien widow with a human father, and something larger. Something extraordinary was beginning. The next morning, the sun barely peeked through the dusty windows of David's apartment, but Leora was already awake. She had spent the night sitting quietly in the corner, listening to the soft breathing of the little girl, Mina, and the gentle hum of life around her. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Almost. Mina bounced out of bed, her hair sticking out in all directions, and ran to Leora. "Come on. Breakfast is ready. Dad made pancakes," she chirped. Leora hesitated, looking around at the cluttered kitchen. The smell of warm pancakes made her stomach growl violently. She wasn't sure how to sit at a human table, how to use the utensils properly, or even how to act. Yet Mina's bright face encouraged her. Slowly, she moved forward and took a seat. David watched silently from the stove, flipping pancakes with careful attention. He seemed unsure of how to handle Leora's presence, but the warmth in his eyes softened each time he glanced at her. "Here," he said, placing a plate in front of her. "Try some." Leora lifted a pancake, staring at it like it was a small treasure. She took a bite. Warmth spread through her body, and she closed her eyes, savoring the taste. It was a simple pleasure, but for someone who had survived on scraps and ration packs for months, it was extraordinary. "You like it?" Mina asked eagerly, leaning forward. "Yes," Leora admitted softly, taking another bite. Very good. The little girl clapped her hands. See, I told you he's nice. Over the next few days, Leora began to settle into the small apartment. She learned to use the human stove, though she often burned the toast or added too much salt. She learned to fold napkins, though they never stayed neat. And she learned to sit at the table without feeling like a stranger in someone else's. Sometimes laughing softly at her mistakes, sometimes offering gentle guidance. Learning quickly but carefully. Mina was her constant guide, showing her how to pour cereal without spilling, how to carry a glass of water without dropping it, and how to smile at her dad without fear. Leora's habits, shaped by years of survival, clashed with the small routines of the household. She left crumbs on the floor, forgot to close doors, and often stared out the window for hours, lost in thought. David would sigh, and Mina would giggle, but slowly, the awkwardness turned into a rhythm. One evening, as the sun set in a soft orange glow, was comfortable, almost peaceful. You're different from anyone I've ever met, David said quietly, breaking the silence. Leora tilted her head. Different, yes, but not unkind. David smiled faintly. No, not unkind. You care, even when you don't realize it. The words made Leora's chest tighten. She had spent so long hiding, so long surviving, that she had forgotten. She asked playfully, always, David said with a smile. Leora laughed softly. The sound startled her, a fragile noise that felt foreign yet comforting. It was a small step one she didn't realize she was ready to take. As the night deepened, conversation flowed awkwardly at first, then more naturally. But inside, warmth spread through the small apartment. Lighter, for the first time in years, Leora understood that survival wasn't enough. Little girl and her father, she could live, truly live. And maybe, just maybe, Mina's bold idea was the start of a new life that was more than food, more than shelter, more than safety. Life together had begun, awkward, messy, and uncertain, but full of promise. Days turned into weeks, and Leora's life with Mina and her father David began to feel less strange and more possible. She woke each morning to the little girl's chatter, to the smell of breakfast, and the quiet presence of someone who did not see her as dangerous. Life had rhythm, small rituals, and warmth that she hadn't felt in years. Mina was a constant whirlwind of energy. She ran from room to room, asking questions, laughing at Leora's mistakes, and proudly showing her the drawings she made for the apartment. Look, this is you, and this is Dad, and we're all happy, she said, holding up a crayon masterpiece. Leora studied the drawing carefully. It was simple, almost childish, but something about it made her heart ache. She had survived alone for so long, hiding from danger, hiding from humans, hiding from hope. And now, here was a small human who wanted her to be part of their family. David, too, began to change. He was cautious at first, polite, keeping a careful distance. But over time, he found himself watching Leora when she didn't notice, smiling at her small gestures, the way she poured the tea with careful precision, the way she tried to learn the simplest of human customs. She was different, yes, alien, strange, yet there was something familiar about her kindness, something that reminded him of what he had always wanted, but never dared to seek. But life together was not without challenges. Leora had secret small things she hadn't shared yet. Her home planet, her past life, the dangers she had escaped. And there were other challenges too. The neighbors whispered about the strange woman living with a human family, the odd sounds of her alien habits echoing through the walls. People stared when she walked outside. David noticed, but said nothing, letting her decide when to reveal herself. One evening, as the three sat together eating dinner, Mina leaned over and whispered to Leora, "Dad doesn't know everything about you, you know." Leora nodded slowly. "Yes, I know, it is complicated, Mina frowned. But you don't have to hide forever. Maybe, if he knows, he will understand. Leora glanced at David, who was busy pouring water into glasses. Could she trust him? Could she risk revealing the truth about herself? About her past? Fear whispered in her mind. Humans didn't always understand. Humans didn't always accept. But Mina's unwavering faith in her mother-to-be gave her courage. The next day, Leora decided to show David a small piece of her world. She led him to the balcony, where a faint shimmer of light traced patterns in the sky. It was a simple alien glow, harmless but beautiful. David stared in awe. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It is light. From my home," Leora explained softly. "It is part of me. Something I cannot hide." David's eyes met hers. There was wonder there, yes, but also acceptance. "It's beautiful," he said. "Thank you for showing me." The moment was small, almost ordinary, yet it changed something between them. Suspicion melted into trust. Distance turned into connection. A bond began to grow, fragile but undeniable. Mina, watching them, smiled to herself. Her bold idea was working, just as she had imagined. Leora was becoming part of their lives, not just as a guest, but as something more. And David? David was beginning to see her as more than just an alien or a stranger. But outside their small home, the colony remained unpredictable. Whispers of strangers, curious neighbors, and prying eyes reminded Leora that safety was never guaranteed. She could feel it, a faint tension lurking at the edge of their peaceful days. One wrong glance, one careless word, and everything could change. Yet, despite the danger, despite the secrets, Leora realized something extraordinary. She belonged here. Not just for the food, not just for the warmth, but because of the bonds forming in the small, messy, beautiful life with Mina and David. For the first time in years, she laughed freely, shared stories, and allowed herself to imagine a future, a life filled with small joys, love, and acceptance. And though the world outside remained uncertain, inside the apartment, the alien widow, the little girl, and the human father had begun to form something that neither distance nor danger could easily destroy. And so, the seeds of love, trust, and family were planted, quietly but firmly, in a world that had once seemed empty and cold. The days had grown warmer, the apartment brighter, and life felt almost normal. Leora had found her place with Mina and David. She cooked meals, laughed at Mina's clumsy jokes, and even helped David with small chores around the apartment. For the first time in years, she felt at home. But life is rarely so simple. It began with a soft knock at the door one evening, just as the sun was setting. Leora was drying dishes, Mina was drawing at the table, and David was sorting mail. The knock was polite but insistent. Leora felt a strange chill creep through her. It wasn't the knock itself, it was the weight behind it, the sense that something outside wanted to disrupt the fragile peace they had built. David opened the door to see a man standing there, his uniform crisp, his eyes sharp. "Good evening," the man said politely but firmly. "We've received reports of unusual activity involving your household." Leora's stomach tightened. Unusual activity. The words rang in her mind. Could someone have noticed her? Could her alien nature put them all in danger? David stepped forward cautiously. "Unusual activity? What? What do you mean?" The man glanced around, his gaze lingering on Leora just long enough for her to feel exposed. "There are sightings reports of anomalies, strange lights, unidentified life forms. We need to inspect your residence." Mina's hands clenched tightly on the table. "Wait, you can't. She's just staying with us," she said, her voice trembling but strong. Leora felt a surge of protectiveness she hadn't experienced before. For months, she had been alone, vulnerable, hiding from those who might harm her. And now this stranger threatened the safety she had finally found. I'll cooperate, Leora said softly, though every nerve in her body screamed caution. She had survived danger before, but this was different. This was her family, and she couldn't risk them being hurt. The inspector nodded, but his eyes remained wary. He moved carefully, scanning the apartment, noting the strange shimmer in Leora's eyes, the unusual pattern she left behind. To him, it was evidence. To Leora, it was life, the life she was finally beginning to embrace. David stepped beside her. She's part of our family, he said quietly. You can see for yourself, but I warn you, she's not dangerous. She cares for my daughter. Mina ran to Leora, wrapping her arms around her waist. See, I told you she's good. She's nice. She helps me. For a moment, the inspector paused. Something in the family's unity, in the child's bold defense, gave him a hint that this was not a threat, but something different, something he didn't understand. But rules are rules. He hesitated, then sighed. I cannot fully dismiss the reports. Leora, I need to know more about you. Where are you from? What are you? Leora looked at David, then at Mina, who nodded slightly, giving her silent encouragement. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. This was the moment of truth. She could run, hide, vanish into the shadows as she had always done. Or she could risk it. I am not from here, she said quietly. I come from another world. I have survived alone for a long time. I am hungry, yes. I am lonely, yes. But I mean no harm. The inspector's eyes widened slightly. He had expected evasive answers, but not honesty. Not vulnerability. David stepped closer, placing a protective hand on Leora's shoulder. She's part of my family now. You may not understand her, but she is not a danger. Please see that. Mina's small hand reached up and grasped Leora's. Please, she said simply. She is my friend, my family. Don't take her away. The room went silent. Outside, the city hummed, unaware of the tension inside this small apartment. Leora felt her chest tighten. For the first time in her life, she realized that love family was worth risk. The inspector studied them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally he nodded slowly. Very well, he said. I will leave this matter open for now. But any unusual activity, and I will return. He left, closing the door softly behind him. The family exhaled in relief. Leora sank to the floor, trembling slightly. Mina ran to hug her again. David knelt beside them both, holding them close. For the first time, Leora understood the depth of what she had gained. She was no longer just a survivor. She was part of a family, a little girl's bold idea, a father's quiet acceptance, and her own courage had brought her here. And though the world outside remained unpredictable, inside their bonds had grown. Stronger, love, trust, and acceptance had survived the test. And for the first time in years, Leora felt hope. Real hope.
The apartment was quiet that morning, but it felt different, warmer, brighter, full of something Leora hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Sunlight spilled through the window, highlighting the small, messy drawings Mina had taped to the walls. They weren't perfect, but to Leora, they were a beautiful reminder of the little girl's boldness, innocence, and love. Leora sat at the table, sipping tea. The aroma was comforting, a small ritual that felt safe. David was reading the news quietly, and Mina bounced around the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune. Life had settled into a rhythm, one that was awkward at times, but honest and full of warmth. Mina ran to Leora, tugging her hand. Come on, we're going outside today, she said, excitement sparkling in her eyes. Leora smiled, a soft, real smile. Outside. Yes, let's go. They stepped out into the morning sunlight. The city buzzed with activity, but for the first time, Leora didn't feel invisible. or like a stranger. She felt safe, accepted, and, surprisingly, loved. David watched her carefully, a quiet admiration in his gaze. Over the past weeks, he had come to realize how much Leora had changed his life, not just as a companion to Mina, but as someone who brought calm, strength, and gentle humor into his world. The fear of the unknown had been replaced with curiosity, respect, and an unspoken bond as they walked through the streets. A small group of children waved at Mina. She waved back enthusiastically, then looked at Leora. "You'll like them. They're nice," she said. Leora nodded politely, offering a small smile. 'Twasn't much, but it was a start. Later, at the park, Mina climbed onto the swings. "Push me," she called. Leora hesitated, unsure of how to participate in human play, but David nudged her gently. "Go on," he said. "You'll figure it out." With a laugh that surprised herself, Leora pushed Mina. The little girl squealed with delight, her laughter ringing like bells through the air. Leora felt something swell inside her, a warmth, a connection, a spark of happiness she hadn't known she could feel. Afterward, they sat under a tree, sharing a small snack. Mina munched happily, while Leora and David exchanged quiet glances. Words weren't needed. They both understood something fundamental. The bond they shared had grown stronger than fear, suspicion, or loneliness. Mina looked up at them suddenly, serious despite her small size. "You know," she said, "I think you and Dad should be together. Really together, not just living here." Leora felt her chest tighten. The little girl's words were blunt, innocent, yet powerful. David cleared his throat, looking down at her, a small smile forming. "I've been thinking the same thing," he admitted softly. For a moment, everything seemed to pause: the wind, the distant sounds of the city, even time itself. Leora's heart raced, unsure, nervous, and yet something inside her leaned forward. She had spent so long alone, afraid, hiding from life. Now, here was a chance to embrace it fully. She reached for David's hand, hesitant at first, then firmly. "Yes," she whispered, "I want that too." Mina jumped from the swing, clapping her hands. "Yes, I knew it. I knew you'd like each other," she shouted, laughter and joy bubbling from her. That evening, back at the apartment, the three of them sat together for dinner. It wasn't just a mealing, it was a celebration of survival, of trust, of courage, and of love. Leora realized that hunger had brought her here, but love had made her stay. Warmth wasn't just food, not just shelter, it was laughter, connection, and the fragile yet powerful bond of family. Outside, the city lights shimmered in the distance. Inside, Leora, David, and Mina shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of understanding. The past, the loneliness, the fear, the uncertainty, was still a part of her, but it no longer controlled her. She had found a home, not just in walls, but in hearts. And as they cleaned the table together, Mina's small voice said, "I think this is the best family ever." Leora smiled, feeling tears prick at her eyes. For the first time in her life, she agreed wholeheartedly. Yes, this was her family. Love had found her in the strangest, most unexpected way. And with this little girl's boldness and her father's quiet courage, Leora knew she was finally home.